Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, go subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to find us on YouTube, go to Empire Media Network. That's AMPIRE. I always tell you, it's much appreciated. Today, it's just you and me, folks, as I'm going to give you my first impressions, having watched Washington for the first time this spring, because 2 weeks ago, I was at our NFL Nation Summit. Last week, I was down with COVID. I'm back, feeling better. Thank you for all the well wishes. A lot of people dealing with much worse, but I do appreciate it. But I was back out today, so I had a chance to watch them. So I'm going to give you some impressions. We're going to talk about Jahan Dotson, Carson Wentz, Benjamin St-Juste, Jack Del Rio, although Del Rio came out with a statement later in the day to kind of clarify some things, and I'm glad he did. But let's start with Ron Rivera, Jeremy Reeves, and Dyami Brown, because that was a big deal during practice. And it's the most upset I've ever seen Ron Rivera. The old linebacker came out today, folks. So on the play, Dyami Brown's cutting inside, looks like a little post. Jeremy Reeves comes flying down when the ball is getting there. I would say Brown had started to pull up a little bit, so I think he kind of got lost in some traffic for Reeves. Reeves crashes down, sees the ball going after the ball, runs right into Brown, knocks Brown to the ground. Brown is out, ends up walking off slowly and ends up going up to the back end of the building. But apparently he's okay. Ron Rivera went off. Who's the safety who hit him? Reeves throws up his hand, said, "I was, coach." So he immediately takes ownership. He had no choice. We all saw it. Everybody saw it. But it was immediate and it was clear. And one thing Reeves said later is that Ron Rivera preaches accountability, and he wanted to be accountable right away in the play. Rivera brings all the players in, starts chewing them out, wants to see discipline, doesn't want to see guys hurt. In June, it's their own teammates. You don't want that to happen now. Of course you don't. It drops some F-bombs. Again, it's about the team. They preach discipline. You've got to be disciplined out there. And that's where they're at with that. Reeves was really good afterwards, being accountable. I did ask Reeves, you're a guy who's always fighting for a roster spot. How hard is it to pull up at any point? He's like, it's very hard, but you got to do it. And even Rivera, I even asked Rivera that. He's a guy who's always do that. It's like, yes, he is. But we know what he can do. Just pull up on the play. We saw you were there. Pull up and be done. And, I think he said if he had seen Brown, he would have pulled up. Didn't see him. So there you go. But you don't want to see guys get hurt in June. So let's get some good stuff. Jahan Dotson, man, that kid is special. I think he's going to be really good this year. I think he's going to be a really good pro as long as he stays healthy. And there's a couple of reasons, not just because he makes the acrobatic, twisty catches. It's because he has a plan. He knows how to attack leverages. He's patient, and he has a plan. I just said that, but I say it twice because I think that's important. So there was a play that happened the other day and against Kendall Fuller where Fuller apparently has outside leverage. And Dotson attacks that leverage, wants to get him to bite inside so he can get him outside, but he's got the outside leverage. How does he get him out of there? So he attacks leverage, stems to the outside, turns to the inside. Fuller bites on that, turns around, and then Dotson quickly turns and gets outside. Long catch. There you go. So flash forward to today. Similar situation, Fuller playing outside leverage, Dotson outside. And Fuller, I even asked Fuller about this. That's why I know this. So I asked Fuller about it. He said, you got me on this route yesterday, so I'm playing that route. So what does Dotson do? He knows he got him on that yesterday, so he's running a different route. But he makes it look like the same route, makes it look like he's going to run the same thing, but then he cuts inside. And he was wide open because Fuller was flying outside. Savvy play. I think that kid's going to be very good. And again, it's because he runs with some savviness. I love the patience. He's just really good in that way. And he does make the twisted catches. I think that's important, especially with Wentz. I think with Wentz, you definitely need to have that wide catch radius, as we've heard so much about this offseason. Speaking of Wentz, knew he had a big arm, saw it. Know you need to have the wide catch radius, saw that a few times as well. I think it's good that they have Dotson, Cam Sims, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Cole Turner. I think all those guys have that wide catch radius, and that's going to be good for Wentz. I think he does well on those underneath routes too. Gets rid of the ball quick. That'll help Curtis Samuel. So there you go. But I asked, one thing I asked some people the other day is, what surprised you about Wentz? What have you learned about him throughout this period? And the first comment was how hard he is on himself and how hard he works. The work ethic jumped out to them. I had heard that. I heard he's a type A personality. So, that's not a surprise to me that they saw that. But I think it's also then Rivera talked today about, again, being hard on himself. And he said there were times that he'd hear Wentz talking to himself, turn around, or hear Wentz talking, think he's talking to him, turn around, and Wentz is talking to himself about something he should have done. That's something I think they like. Now, one thing you hear, he's got to take more accountability with all the stuff throughout the game. And so that way teammates know that. That's something we'll find out during the season. But I think there's excitement now because of how he handles the huddle. Teammates think he's very smart, has a big arm. And I feel like they know they can use a lot more of their playbook because of it. So there's definite excitement with that. He's worked well with Jahan Dotson too. And on Friday, I'm going to get into some of this with Logan Paulson, so tune in then as well. The other thing is I think it'll be interesting to see how he and Dyami Brown connect down the field. I think Dyami Brown's going to be more of a downfield big play guy, more than a guy who's going to catch 50 or 60 balls. Benjamin St. Juste, another kid that I liked last year, and I'm going to tell you why I liked him last year. I'm going to tell you what I saw this time. Last year, what I liked is I felt like he played a lot more patient with his eyes for a rookie, and I think he was better with his eyes than they realized he would be. I liked how he carried guys out of his zone and got back into his zone. I also liked how he learned from his mistakes. I remember talking to my podcast last year, and I asked him about some plays from the Chargers game. And he would talk about plays that came up in subsequent games that he was able to make because of what he learned in that game. And those kind of guys tend to do very well as long as he stays healthy. What I like too is they're playing him inside. It's not a traditional role for a guy who's his size to play that nickel spot inside. And it's a different nickel role than they would have had Landon Collins in, for example. So just because it's in a nickel, it's a different type of role. But that's what I like. You can have some versatility with him. But I asked Del Rio about that, and he talked about one of the things he was surprised by was that he could play inside because his quick feet. It's a sudden change area. But if you have those quick feet, you can play inside. It also gives him a bigger corner inside who can maybe help a little bit more against the run than a smaller corner could. But I think it's good. I think he's very patient. And you see that when he covers Jahan Dotson. So there was a play today in the slot, and Dotson ends up making the catch. But what I like with St. Juste is he was patient off the line. Dotson tries to shake him a little bit, doesn't do it. St. Juste stays on him, runs a shallow crosser, and Wentz has to wait a while to make the throw. I don't know if he completes that throw in a game because maybe he doesn't have enough time. He had to go he basically was on the right side of the slot, crossed over to the left hash is where around he got beyond between the hash and the numbers on the other side where he got the ball. What I like too is that St. Juste was right there to make the stop. So it would have only been a 4 or 5 yard gain. I think with Dotson, that's a good play for what St. Juste did. So I think he's got some versatility. Again, it's June. Stay healthy, but you like what you see in June. All right, now let's get to Jack Del Rio. And he caused a bit of a stir today, and I think that's something this team really doesn't need because they create enough. There's enough stirs always around this franchise. You don't want to create more headlines. So, and today it actually probably would have been okay. He was asked about some of his tweets and how if he worries if it affects the players or not. And that's really in all this stuff. Let's make it clear. You can say what you want. You can think what you want. You have the right to do that. But the concern is always, how does it affect your relationship with the players, the locker room? Clearly, you're coming from different backgrounds. Does it make a difference in the locker room? Will they buy into you or not? You know, this is not a guy who needs to be fired because of this, but you've got to have that good relationship with the players. And that's where I think you have to how does that affect it? That's it. We talked to Kendall Fuller, wasn't even aware about the tweets. John Allen told JP Finley that all he cares about with his defensive coordinator is just work hard. So I think that's going to be a lot. There may be some guys who have problems with it. I'm sure there are, but we're not hearing it. But I think that's always the concern in those situations. And don't create headlines for a team that needs to stay out of headlines. But Del Rio, to his credit, here's the only mistake he made today was he referred to a quote dust up at the Capitol. That phrase, dust up, really, really took off. And it's why it became a news story for ESPN. It's why it became a news story for the Associated Press, etc. Everything else he had said to that point was actually pretty good as far as like his reasoning, his rationale. He's free, he loves the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can disagree with some of his other thoughts. That's fine. You're free to do that. Free country. But then when he said the dust up, that created the headlines. But later in the day, he came out with a statement, and I do believe, you can judge for yourself with it, but he came out with a statement saying he didn't mean to characterize it that way. Clearly felt there was something more. Said he has no problem with the protests. For him, it was always about the riots, not the protests. And then, so I think it was just poor wording, but he came out, apologized for that, and he's not going to change his opinion on what he thinks on those things, nor should he. He's free to have it, but he did change his wording on that. And so I think that's something that I'm glad he did that, because I think it was needed. So, just another day out here, and who knows whether or not this league will be remembered in August. If they get off to a bad start, of course stuff like this comes up, because then it makes you wonder, why is this defense underperforming? They get off to a good start, you won't hear about it. So, but I think what they would probably like here is for him to be a little bit less active on Twitter. Don't create more headlines for a team that needs to stay out of the headlines for anything that's off the field. Create the headlines on the field. Create the headlines because the defense is playing great, but Carson Wentz is making plays, et cetera. And I think, Del Rio was right. There are some exciting things they see out here. Let that be the focus. And all he was doing, to be honest with you, in fairness to him, he was answering our questions, and he answered all of them. So it's not, he wasn't the one who was bringing this up. We did. But part of that is because you do know some of the stuff he said. You wonder, how does this play out in the locker room? Is he concerned about that aspect of it, et cetera? So you may not like that we asked those questions, but it was something that certainly resonated with a lot of people. And it certainly was something, a topic that needed to be broached. We don't give the answers. We just ask the questions. How the answers go, those guys control the answers. But it was why the topic came up, because again, the main concern is, how does this play in the locker room? So there you go. You can disagree with that all you want. That's fine. Still be here next time. But I do appreciate you tuning in. That's all I have for this episode. Like I told you, I'm going to have Logan Paulson on for Friday. So tune in for that. Talk to you next time. Hey everybody, it's John Keim. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and I'll continue to bring you guests who provide excellent insight into the Washington Commanders. And while you're here, check out the other terrific content on the Empire Media Network, including Inside the Cap with Joel Corey and All's Caps with Steve Wino and former Washington Capital Carl Alsner. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Thank you.